Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I used to think marriage was about perseverance. That if you just gave enough, gave of your time, your energy, your affection, it would all come back eventually. Like planting seeds in dry soil, you water them daily even when there's no sign of life. Because you believe in the bloom. But lately, all I've been doing is watering ash. I didn't notice when the distance started, not really. I mean, sure, things got quieter between us after our third anniversary. But people say the spark fades, right? I thought maybe we were settling into something deeper, calmer. I mistook silence for comfort. But it wasn't that. It was detachment. Hers, not mine. I'd bring home her favorite wine, and she'd say she wasn't in the mood. I'd run her a bath after a long day, and she'd thank me, then go upstairs and lock the door behind her. Every gesture I made was received like a burden, not a gift. And slowly, I started to feel like a salesman pitching a product no one wanted anymore, myself. But it wasn't until that one Sunday morning that I realized I was the only one still trying. We'd just finished breakfast. I made blueberry pancakes, her favorite. She barely touched hers. Just scrolled through her phone while sipping coffee, occasionally tapping something with that perfect, rehearsed smirk she now wore around me like armor. I asked her if she wanted to go for a walk. There was a street fair downtown, something we used to enjoy. She didn't even look up. Love needs to be deserved, she said casually, like she was commenting on the weather. At first, I thought I misheard. What? She looked at me then. Not cruelly. Not angrily. Just with the kind of indifference you show a leaf stuck to your windshield. I said, love needs to be deserved. You think just because you do sweet things once in a while, it means everything should be fine between us? You don't get to coast on old efforts. It was so clean, so cold, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe I was hearing it. I stared at her, trying to find the woman I married in those eyes, but she wasn't there. She was speaking like someone on a podcast. Detached, superior. Talking about love, like an analyst. Not in it. Not even near it. I didn't argue. What would be the point? In that moment, something inside me cracked, not like glass, but like ice. It didn't shatter, it just shifted. Something colder settled in. That was the day I stopped trying. No dramatic fights. No ultimatums. I just let go. No more notes on her pillow in the morning. No more date night reservations. No more buying her favorite toothpaste just because I noticed it was almost out. I started moving around her like she'd taught me to carefully, distantly. Like a stranger with familiar habits. She didn't notice right away. At first, I think she thought it was a phase, or maybe even a victory. She began to act lighter, even flirty, but not with me. She joined a fitness boot camp at the park, started posting more selfies, tagging motivational quotes like, "You owe it to yourself to choose growth over comfort." It didn't bother me. Not really. I'd already shifted into something else, observation mode. I wasn't angry. I was aware. There was one moment, though, a Wednesday evening. I came home early from work and found her sitting on the couch in gym shorts, hair still damp. She was watching something on her phone and smiling. That soft, private kind of smile, the kind I hadn't seen directed at me in years. She didn't hear me come in. Didn't even pause her video. I stood in the hallway for a second too long, and maybe I saw what I wasn't supposed to. Maybe I saw her reflection on the screen, arm brushing against someone else's in the park. Maybe I imagined it. I don't know. All I know is she wasn't smiling for me. I moved past her quietly, went upstairs, and shut the door. And in that silence, I realized I wasn't heartbroken. I was numb. Numb is worse, I think. It means you stopped expecting anything, even pain. For the next few days, I just watched her. Not obsessively, just attentively. She was evolving. Not growing, not really. Just shifting personas. Every day was a new affirmation. A new lecture on boundaries and deserving. A new version of her that had no room for me except as the backdrop. The dependable, invisible husband. And yet, she still expected me to care. To be there. To orbit her moods like I always had. She didn't understand that the moment she said, "Love needs to be deserved," she handed me the perfect permission slip. To stop deserving her. And slowly, beautifully, terribly, that's exactly what I did. There's a strange kind of relief that comes from no longer trying. Once I let go, life didn't feel like a constant test anymore. I stopped evaluating myself through her reactions. I stopped waiting for gratitude. Stopped waiting for her, really. It was like coming up for air after holding my breath for too long. But that doesn't mean I stopped noticing. I noticed how she laughed louder at her phone now than she ever did at anything I said. I noticed how she came home later and later, talking about late meetings and volunteer wrap-ups, whatever that meant. I noticed how she never mentioned names, just vague group references like, "we went out after," or "they decided to get drinks." I also noticed how she suddenly had opinions again. On everything. Politics, books, philosophy, fitness. She spoke with this new voice, measured, performative, like she was narrating her own TED Talk. And more than once, she casually quoted someone from work named Miles. At first, I let it slide. But once you stop caring emotionally, it's incredible how sharp your focus becomes. I began connecting dots, not because I wanted to, but because I had nothing else left to connect to. Miles was her new project manager at the nonprofit. I remember the name from a LinkedIn post I skimmed months ago, back when I still gave a damn. Tall, lean, always posing with a hand in his pocket and a grin that screamed self-importance. He ran team-building retreats, apparently. Also published essays on emotional alignment in post-capitalist love systems. Yeah, that kind of guy. At first, I didn't think much of it. He seemed too much of a caricature to be a threat. But then I heard her laugh on a Saturday morning full, unfiltered, almost musical. She was pacing the kitchen, Bluetooth earpiece in, giggling softly while making eggs she wouldn't eat. She said something like, "Well, maybe I need to stop expecting loyalty from people who haven't evolved yet." I didn't ask who she was talking to. I just stood there in the hallway, watching the way she tucked her hair behind her ear. The way she paused in front of the mirror by the fridge, checked herself, then smiled at the reflection, not for it, but at it. Like a reminder to herself that she was still wanted. That night I began sleeping in the guest room, not out of anger, but efficiency. Less pretending. No need to pretend we were sharing anything anymore, except a lease and a legal bond that hadn't yet been broken. In fact, over the next few weeks, she got oddly pleasant. Not warm, not affectionate, but pleasant. Like someone trying not to wake the sleeping dog in the corner of the room. She even started leaving little messages for me on the kitchen counter. Post-its that said things like, "I know we've both been busy. Let's talk soon." Or "dinner in the fridge if you're hungry. Hope your day was okay." I didn't know if it was guilt or strategy. Maybe both. She'd been wearing new perfume too, something musky, assertive. And she wore it even on days she didn't go into the office. Once, I asked, casually, "You seeing someone?" She blinked at me like I'd thrown ice water in her face. Then laughed, too quickly. "What? No. Well, paranoid much." "I'm not angry," I said. "It's just a question." She shrugged, walked away. No denial. Just departure. That's when I knew. I didn't need to know details. Because knowing didn't matter anymore. I was done being the detective in a story I didn't care to solve. Let her keep her secrets. But I did start making changes. Quiet ones. I created a new bank account. Shifted my direct deposits. Cut my contributions to our shared expenses in half. When she asked about the credit card not working at the grocery store, I told her it must have been a fraud block. I said I'd call them. I never did. And yet, she didn't press. I think she sensed it. The emotional oxygen had been sucked out of the room. There was nothing left to burn. A friend of mine, Gabe, noticed something was off when we met for lunch. "You look lighter," he said. "Like you finally threw off a heavy coat." "Maybe I stopped trying to wear one that doesn't fit," I answered. He didn't press, but he understood. We both knew what was coming. Not a storm. Not a fight. Just collapse. I had spent years trying to keep something alive that was already embalmed. And now that I'd stopped moving, it was her turn to feel the stillness. To see what absence really looks like when it's not loud or bitter, just absolute. And still, I hadn't said a single cruel word to her. The silence was doing the job just fine. I've learned there's a difference between pretending not to know something and genuinely not knowing it. For weeks, I lived in that space in between. The kind of space where you see your wife walk into the house with wet hair and a fresh gym bag but no workout soreness. Where her phone is always face down on the kitchen island. Where she comes home with an extra takeout bag and no explanation, and you already know it wasn't a mistake. But still, you wait. Not because you're hoping to be proven wrong. You wait because the truth, when it finally arrives, can't be denied. And you want it to come bearing its own weight. That weight arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I was wrapping up a remote meeting when my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You left this behind last night. Hope you weren't too sore after round 2-inch. Attached was a photo. It was dark, blurry, obviously taken in low light. But the shape of her face, her hand wrapped around a wine glass, that same distinctive gold bracelet she always wore on her right wrist, it was unmistakable. She was leaning back on a leather couch that definitely wasn't ours. Bare shoulder. Thin strap. Miles. I didn't reply. Just stared at it for a long minute, the same way you might stare at a car wreck after the sirens have stopped. There wasn't rage. There wasn't heartbreak. There was only stillness. A final click. Like hearing the door lock behind you after you've already stepped outside. I didn't confront her. What would be the point? That evening, she walked into the house like nothing had changed. Hair tied back, bag in hand, scrolling through her phone like the whole world was behind a screen. She said something casual, "I'm going to shower, then we should talk." About us. I nodded, didn't respond. She thought she still had control over the script. That was the funny part. She thought this story was hers to write. Like I was still stuck on page 42 and hadn't flipped ahead to see the ending. While she was in the shower, I pulled out my suitcase and started packing a few essentials. Not for drama. Not to leave that night. Just to make it clear to myself, this chapter was closing. And I wasn't going to stumble through the last paragraph like a fool. Over the next couple of days, I started putting things in motion. I changed the passwords on my accounts. Quietly removed her as a beneficiary on my life insurance. Took my name off a joint credit card. The first of many small erasures. She started noticing, of course. She always notices when something stops serving her. Friday night, she brought home Thai food. Sat across from me like we were still something. Smiling. Hair curled. She told me I seemed distant. That we hadn't connected in a while. That maybe she hadn't been as present as she should have been. Then she used that phrase again. But love needs to be deserved, right? And maybe I haven't deserved yours lately. I almost laughed. It was the first time she'd admitted anything resembling accountability. The first time she had softened in months. But it wasn't real. It was a test. A script adjustment. She didn't want me. She wanted the stage lights back on. She was trying to reel me in just enough to keep me orbiting. Keep me confused. Keep me on the hook. So I nodded. Not because I believed her, but because I wanted to see what she'd do when I stopped reacting entirely. She leaned across the table, fingers brushing mine, and for the first time in a long time, I saw fear in her eyes. The kind of fear that isn't born from guilt, but from losing control. That's when I knew she felt it. The shift. She couldn't name it yet, but it was there. Thick in the air between us. The certainty that I had seen something, or heard something, or learned something. And more importantly, that I no longer cared to ask for an explanation. The following week, her behavior changed. She started coming home early. Started cooking again. One night she lit candles at the table. I didn't show up for dinner. I told her I had eaten on the way home. Another night, she wore the dress I once told her was my favorite. I didn't comment. I barely looked up. The final straw, I think, was the night I didn't respond when she touched my arm in bed. She whispered my name, soft and unsure, like someone testing a frozen lake with their foot. I rolled over and said nothing. The silence between us wasn't angry anymore. It was funeral quiet. And in that quiet, she began to realize the man she once took for granted had stopped knocking at the door. And even worse, he'd stopped caring if it opened again. I used to think revenge had to be loud, that it came with shouting matches, slammed doors, dramatic exits. Maybe that's what I used to expect. Some righteous explosion that would level the house and leave her gasping for air. But now I know better. The best revenge is stillness. It's absence. It's the hollow silence where your voice used to be, echoing off the walls they took for granted. And she felt it. She felt it in the mornings when I didn't say goodbye. In the evenings when I came home late and didn't offer an explanation. In the quiet refusal to rise to her bait when she tried, ever so subtly, to restart our old dance. That Thursday, she waited for me on the porch. It was the first time in years she'd lit the fire pit, her favorite place in the world during early fall. I remember when she used to drag me out there with blankets and wine, talking about everything and nothing until midnight. Now she sat there alone, bottle open, 2 glasses poured. I arrived home, nodded once, and walked past her like I was just a neighbor, not the man she married. "Hey," she called out. "Can we talk?" "Talk?" I said, pausing at the door. "Sure. About what?" She swallowed. "About us." I waited. No invitation. No warmth. Just quiet permission to keep digging her own hole. "I think I lost sight of something," she said, a little too carefully. "I think I forgot what we had. And I'm sorry." I nodded. Not sarcastically. Not cruelly. Just nodded. She kept going, like a woman on a tightrope trying to find her balance too late. "I've been thinking a lot about what I said, that thing. about love needing to be deserved. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. How did you mean it? I asked, calm as ever. She paused. I think I was angry. Or scared. I don't know. But I know I didn't appreciate what you were giving. And I know I shut you out. And Miles? I asked. There it was, the stumble. The tremor in her voice. Nothing happened with Miles, she said too quickly. We were just talking. It was stupid. He took things too far. I shut it down. That's so? She hesitated, then gave a small, pathetic laugh. You don't believe me. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. The wind picked up a little. She rubbed her arms like the cold had just arrived, even though it had been creeping in for months. I miss us, she said finally. And that was it. Her last swing. I stepped closer, looked her in the eyes, and said it calmly, clearly. You once told me that love had to be deserved, that I wasn't doing enough to earn it. So I stopped trying. And now, you're the one trying. Do you feel loved? She looked like she'd been slapped. No anger, just the sinking weight of understanding. I didn't mean to push you away. You didn't push me. You removed yourself. I just left the empty space where you used to be. She stood up, glass still in hand. Her voice wavered. I thought you'd fight for me. I smiled, not out of spite, but because of the irony. You assumed I'd keep proving myself. But I don't chase people who rewrite the rules mid-game. Especially not ones who move the goalposts every time I get close. The air between us grew thick. Not with tension, but with finality. She stepped closer. Her hand grazed mine. I never stopped loving you. I looked at her hand, then into her eyes. You loved the version of me who kept showing up no matter how little you gave back. That version's gone. She didn't cry. Not then. She just stood there, stunned, staring at the wreckage she hadn't seen coming. But the tears came later. That night, I heard her sobbing through the bedroom door. For once, I didn't reach for it. I didn't ask what was wrong, because I already knew. She wasn't crying for me. She was crying for the version of herself she couldn't get back, the one who was adored, who was fought for, who was the center of someone's universe. And now? Now she was just a woman alone in a house that no longer loved her back. I didn't pack my bags in a flurry or storm out with dramatics. That wasn't the shape of our ending. No, what we had was quieter than that, like an old house finally settling, the foundation cracking not because of some sudden disaster, but because no one had reinforced it in years. A week later, I emailed her a draft separation agreement. No confrontation. No lawyer letters, yet. Just a simple document outlining the terms. My half. Her half. The lines between. She never responded. Not immediately. I think part of her was still hoping it was a bluff. That I was testing her now, the way she had tested me. But I wasn't. There was nothing left to test. The answers had all been graded. 2 weeks later, I moved out. Not because I was running, but because I was done. Done with waiting for her to remember who we used to be. Done with trying to win back a version of us that only I had mourned. I didn't tell many people. Most had already seen the signs. The only call I made was to her father. He was a quiet man, old-fashioned in his values. When I told him we were separating, he paused, then said softly, "I'm sorry, son. I always hoped she'd learn what she had before it was gone." Funny thing was, I didn't even feel vindicated. Just affirmed. She called me 3 times that month. I didn't answer. She texted once. It read, "Can we talk? Not to fix things. Just to say what we need to say." I thought about it. Then I didn't respond. Because what more was there to say? Everything she needed to hear, she already had. Everything I needed to say, I already did. Through silence, through absence, through finally honoring my own worth. I heard through a mutual friend that she had taken time off work. Said she was dealing with emotional exhaustion. She'd stopped wearing the new clothes, stopped going to boot camp, stopped showing up with that unearned confidence she used to wear like perfume. I didn't wish her misery. I didn't need her punished. Her consequence was watching the thing she pushed away never come back. Sometimes I wonder if she ever rereads that moment, her words, so casually delivered over breakfast. Love needs to be deserved. I think about how that line echoed through our house long after she spoke it. How it built walls between us. How it taught me something far more important than any relationship ever had. You don't win someone's love by proving your worth. You lose your soul trying. Now I wake up in a smaller place, but it's warm in ways I forgot mattered. There's no tension in the air. No performance in the kitchen. No walking on eggshells just to avoid another round of her curated superiority. Some mornings I still catch myself reaching for a second coffee mug. But the moment passes, and what's left isn't regret, it's relief. I don't resent her anymore. I just understand her. She needed to feel above love. She needed to treat it like a commodity, something to ration, withhold, assign value to. And I was foolish enough to keep bidding higher, thinking she'd finally say, enough. You've earned it. She never did. So I stopped playing. And the moment I did, she watched our marriage collapse in front of her, brick by brick. And I never lifted a finger.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.